Hi and welcome to my channel. This is Jeannie and this is DIY with Jeannie. And today what we are going to do is I'm going to kind of go over how to crumb piece, and that's where you take your leftover pieces of fabric and you just put them together, make a new piece of fabric. And then we're going to take that fabric and make a mug rug. Now a mug rug is basically a coaster. It's a square piece. You can put it on your desk. It's usually longer than your mug so that you have a place to put like a scone or a cookie or a muffin or whatever it is that you have, or even your spoon and tea bag holder can sit beside the mug. So it's more rectangular than square, and it's pretty much a just cute little decorative place to put your drink, and then you're able to wash it and it doesn't get a stain on your desk and stuff like that. So I have here my box of crumbs. And what are crumbs? Well, they're any leftover piece of fabric that's really not big enough to do something else with, but it's too big to really throw away, because crafters are hoarders, and I'm just going to say it. So what I have is a lot of different fabrics that have browns in them. And so I am going to use browns this time. See, I've got quite a piece here. And it was cut off at the seam. And so it's still a really nice piece of fabric. So I'm going to take a lot of these browns, these golden colors, these prints, and put them together. And I will show you how I'm going to piece it. So let me get these out. Let's see if we have any other browns that we might want to pull out that might work. That's a cute one. I think that will be enough fabric for now. So we're going to just leave this. And every time I make a project, I take my big pieces of fabric and they go into my crumb box. So what we do is I'm going to take these and iron them. Get all those seams out. I'll steam iron them so that I get those, not steams, those creases out where it's been folded. And then I will come back and show you how we're going to put these together. That's a beautiful piece, but it's really too small, so I'm going to set that to the side because we really don't need it. That one we can use. We can even put this in there. So we're going to go back. I'm going to go back and iron everything. And then I will come back with the iron pieces and we will clip them together, and I'll show you how we're going to sew them. So I will be right back. Okay, the pieces I'm using today most of them are bigger than I would normally use for a crumb, but I wanted you to really understand how this all goes together. So it's almost like strip quilting, but you use all kinds of fabric and whatever kinds that you have. So I want to avoid, well, I don't have to. I want to not have this end showing. And this end is just the part of the fabric that it's the end that tells them which fabric they printed, what year it was printed, and things like that. It's more of the information. And they do the same thing on paper printing. They have an end where it's got what colors they used and all of that. And normally they just cut that off before production. Sometimes you'll see it in newspapers and in some magazines. It just doesn't get cut right, and you'll still see that little edge with some colored lines and things on it. But it's just the salvage end. It's not a piece that you actually use. So what we're going to do is we're going to just pin some pieces together and go straight stitch along the edge. And we don't care too much as long as we're getting wrong sides together. We don't care too much about how they are situated. Do they fit evenly? I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm trying to make sure that I have just an area that's fairly straight. And most of these pieces are cut straight, but a couple of them aren't. And I'll show you what I mean by putting them together that way. So I'm just taking this really long strip, and now I've got this piece, and I'm going to cut off that leg right there. This is going to be really too small for us to use. I mean, I could, but here's the problem is your seam allowance will take up the majority of the piece. So we really don't save pieces that we're not going to get some form of use. But I've got lots here that I can use. So I can do it on either end, but as long as I get a straight edge on that end and I sew down here, that's what I'm looking for. So we're going to go ahead and sew it like this, and we will trim it afterwards when we get ready to put it together a little bit more comprehensively. So let me put this together, and like I said, these are my clips and I use them in place of pins. I try not to use pins because I'm a klutz and I stab myself, and when I stab myself then I end up bleeding on the fabric, and I don't like that. So even though I'm leaving a little bit of me behind every time I do it. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here with me, and I know that there are people who would like to see me run this through the sewing machine, and at the moment I do not have it set up at my sewing machine for me to be able to do that. That is the plan for this summer, once I have finished teaching summer school, is to fix that room so that I can do more of that for you. So we're going to go sew a straight line. I'm going to go ahead and trim this because I don't want to take the whole piece. Set this aside, and I'm going to go put this together. Just one straight seam all the way down is all I have to do, and I'll probably use 1/4 of an inch seam allowance so that I get plenty of room out of this one, because I do want the sunflowers to show. So let me go run that straight stitch, and it is exactly where I clipped it. That's where the stitch is going to go, and I will be right back. Okay, I got all of these sewn straight line. See, it's just a straight stitch. They're all sewn down. So now we're going to cut them apart. And we do that because we're going to want to make a bigger sheet of fabric. So let's cut all of this apart. And then we'll put it together for our next piece. So what we're going to do is, again, go in here and put it against a straight edge. And now I've got a few that aren't a straight edge, and I'm going to show you how we'll do that. So we're going to go back in and clamp. So that we have a bigger piece. And I'm hoping to put together enough material, maybe we can make 2 mug rugs, because that would be awesome. So there's one. Now this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and kind of straighten it up a bit. Because now these are really too small for me to save. I could, and we could still sew it together and have a big enough piece. I just probably won't. Normally I would, but I probably won't for this one because I really don't need those tiny pieces. So now we're going to put this up, and I want to make sure it's a straight enough line that I'm going to get all of that fabric in. Hi, sure, I'm glad y'all came back. For those of you that have been with us before, thank you for giving me another chance, another shot at your time. I appreciate that. For those of you that have subscribed, really welcome back. You are my OGs, my tribe, if you will. And I appreciate your coming in and spending time with me. For brand new people, welcome. I hope you enjoy the content. This is just a very simple project, but I want you to know that there's nothing that has to be thrown away. If you have a big enough piece of fabric, and this would be a big enough piece of fabric because I can still get easily a 1/2 inch out of that, it's still big enough that I could piece it together in such a way that I can still use it. So I appreciate your time, and I hope you'll subscribe. Hit the like button. That really does help me. So let me go. I'm going to again, sew a straight stitch. Now this one, I'm going to sew the straight stitch based on this piece of fabric, because you'll notice I have some hanging over, but I don't need that's hanging over. It has that little circle-ish mark, and that was because we made one of our little yo-yos out of it, but I still kept the fabric because it's still good. Now, I do iron my fabric towards the darkest piece. So when I'm ironing that seam open, I always put that towards the darkest piece. Some people split them and open it wide open and put the light towards the light and the dark towards the dark, and that's perfectly fine. I learned it this way, and that's just the way I do it. So let me go sew these two pieces, and I will be back. I will sew and iron them, and then we will do the next step, which is probably putting these two together in such a way that we like it. So I'll be right back. Okay, here are our two pieces, and again, I ironed toward the dark sides. Always go to the dark side. I'm just kidding. But I wanted to show you how I put this together. So when I go in and sew, and you notice, you knew I had two parts. So I sewed this one through, and then I don't cut the thread until afterwards. And then I will take and just feed the next one in, so that sometimes the machine has a tendency to feed it down into the bobbin area, and it gets all jammed up, and that is a serious nightmare. And that's especially when I'm doing things where I have this little thin piece and then it doesn't meet up with the next fabric for a few seconds, and it does it that way, and it's so frustrating when that happens. So that is one way that we do it. Oh, I shouldn't have done that, but I did. So I put the same fabric kind of side by side. Usually I won't do that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to want to put it together in a way that we're going to eventually get a rectangle. Now, and let's add it here. Give us a little more width. And then we'll come back and see what we think from there. I like that idea. I like where this is going, because it still gives us that crumb idea where everything doesn't have to be exact, which is something that I really prefer, because sometimes things go wonky. And as frustrating as it is, it's good to know that you have an exit plan if you have one. I mean, always start with, okay, what if that doesn't work out? What's my next plan? And you don't have to start there. I mean, like I just did, I'm problem solving on the fly. So let me put this, and I will go sew this piece and iron it, and we will come back and kind of square things up. Yes, kind of square things up and see where we are at that point. So give me just a minute to put one more seam in. Okay, I'm back, and let me show you what I've done. After I sewed this, I went ahead and trimmed the excess before I ironed it, so that this all came off from here and here before, because I didn't want that big bulky piece as I ironed it. So I didn't want that on there. Here's my leftover piece from this. It will go back in my scrap box. This will go back in my scrap box because there's still enough to use, just like we learned from this piece. So that is what we have so far. Now, what do we want to do? What I'd like to do is get enough for 2 mug rugs out of this. So let's see. I'll go ahead and grab the fleece, and we'll use that in just a minute. So let's see. We have some more of the browns, beiges. What would that look like? That would be nice. We can cut it down. Or you could do it with this piece. I'm not sure I like that right there. So let's not do that one. I am kind of okay with this one. That would give us pretty close to the same sizes. Oh, I want it right here. So what I'm going to do is first, before I go back, I'm going to go ahead and trim this like I would afterwards. But before, after, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to save this piece because quite a bit of it I can still use. Okay. So we've still got a nice little piece of crumb there. So let me this one will not stay this thickness. I don't want a piece quite that large of the color. See, and this is what I was talking about you're just kind of piecing it together any way that you want to, but you're taking little pieces that you had left over that you weren't sure what you were going to do with, and now it kind of has a purpose. So let's get that on, and you know, while we're at it, I don't hate that. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Let's see, what else do I have? I think I like that better. Let's do that on this side. I mean, we're already sewing. We may as well sew a big piece. And one of the things about this is how you can put a quilt top together as well. You just keep adding anything you want to add. I mean, there is absolutely no rule to this. Crumb quilting is very much the it is the junk journal of the sewing. So we are just taking whatever we have at hand and we are putting it together. So let's take this piece and we will go and sew these two together and iron them, and then come back and see how this is going to go together with it. I think it's going to all come together really nicely. So we're going to go do another 2 seams, iron it open, and then we'll decide on the width of this one when I get back. Okay, we are all back and we are together, but let me show you something. So I sewed it from the solid side when I was feeding it through, and when I did, I didn't catch this piece. I don't know if you can see the seam that's in there, but I didn't catch it, so I had to go back and sew it again about 1/8 of an inch in to make sure that I got this piece, and I just did it across the front. So you'll notice that this seam allowance is much bigger, and that's because I did fine until I got to that last one and I just didn't catch it. So always check your seams before you decide that that's the way you want it, because if I'd ironed that and it not been caught, I would have had to flatten it back out, go back over it, and then do it all over again, and that would have just been a huge waste of time. So now I'm going to take this piece and put it here across there so that I can come back and then put the two together. So I'm going to go sew that on, straight line, trim it, iron it open, and I'll be back. So don't go away. I'll be right back. Okay, real quick. Notice how this is not straight. That's not a problem. And the reason that's not a problem is because we're crumb quilting. We're taking what we have and making what we can. So let's put it together like that. That'll leave us with a nice big piece of this yellow. So we want to make sure it's somewhat straight. So it doesn't matter that this piece is going to be angled. Let me flip that over, and you can see how I'm going to lose part of this, and I'm going to be okay with that. Go ahead and trim it off so I don't sew it wrong. Let's get that out of the way. And I'm going to put this together. I'm going to put a straight seam right there. We're going to come back after I've straight seamed this. Actually, I can go ahead. Let me go ahead and take the big chunk of this off, because I don't need it there. And since I don't need it there, I don't want to mess it up. And that leaves me with another big crumb piece that I can use later. So see, I've still got all of these little pieces that I've used along the way that I still have leftovers of. So I'm going to go and seam this piece right here. We'll open it up and we will then look at our little piece. And like I said, this is still a nice piece for a quilt top. You could even take this, cut it into strips, and then put it together in an angular way. I mean, it's all up to you. But don't throw things away because you don't see a way to use them, because you could still use them. I can still use this piece. Let's say I wanted it, I could put it as an angle piece here, and that puts a nice little corner on. Just start piecing things together until you have a big piece of fabric. Just be careful of your seam allowances. You might have to go back in and trim them so it's not so bulky underneath. But don't just throw big pieces away because you don't know what to do with them. I'm keeping the bigger pieces because I know I can still use them. See, here's an example. And that still is going to leave me a nice piece of material. So even having ironed it that much, you know, giving myself that 1/4 of an inch, it's still going to have a good piece of fabric there. So let me go this seam, then we will start cutting out our edge. I will grab the material for the bottom, and I will show you our bias tape. Fortunately for us, when I bought that from the quilt shop, that bag of browns, I got this big strip, and what they did was they made their own bias tape. And now I don't have to have bias tape to do the edges because we have one. Yay! So I will be right back. Let me get this seam in and let it get that ironed, and then we'll start squaring it up. Okay, so here is our big piece. It is somewhat square, but it's not squared up. So let me show you what you can do. If you were doing this and you wanted to then make some sort of quilt top, but you didn't really like the stripes, why not cut it on the diamond and see how beautiful that little diamond would be? Let's fold it so you can see a little better. Flip it over. Just that. But look how pretty a diamond of this would look. Let's do it again. I'll just block it with white. See how pretty that little diamond would be? I mean, that would be a really pretty little block in a quilt. So, and then we would save these triangles for something else in the quilt. So that is another idea. When you're piecing this together, don't think of it as it has to look like this. It can look like anything you want it to look like. So what I want to do is determine how big do I want this. So let's get an idea of how big it is now. I would say this over where I can actually see it. It is about 8 inches wide, and it is 13.5 inches long. So if we took that 13 and halved it, that'd be 7.5. So let's see where that would put us. No, it wouldn't. It would be 6.5. I'm going, why does that look wrong? So do we want to do it block by block, or do we want it, do we want it angled? So let's see, 6.5 would be about here. I may only get one out of this, and I am going to be okay with that, because I'm still going to have leftovers that I can do something with. And we will do something with it next time. It has trouble going through that big seam. Go. Set that aside. Now, I love a rotary cutter. I used to hate it, but I have sliced and diced myself on this more times than I care to think about. So if you have one of these, be very, very careful. That little booger is sharp. Okay. Okay. That. We are 6.5, and I could do it. I could do it 5. The 5. Got it all square, so you're looking at the lines on both sides to make sure you're square, because we've already cut those two sides. Cut that off. Now, isn't that pretty? So what I'm going to do is go put our bias tape around this side, around the whole square, and I'll come back and we will, I'm going to put the fleece on it next, and then we'll put the backing on it and quilt it. I like the way that looks. Fold this back because I want a straight line here. Cut that so there's not so much bulk in there. But when we fold it over, we don't want the frayed edge to show, and I don't want to sew the edge. So I'm going to start kind of in the middle. Go down, so all the way down the edge. And then to turn it, fold down and we fold over. And what that should do, it's not going to do. So we want to fold in and over. So I want to make sure that that point right here is good. Fold this guy over like so, so that when we flip it, we have a mitered corner right there without doing any work. So see how what I did was folded it back on itself like so, lined up my little corner. I'm just going to nail press it down so it has a seam, and then fold that back over. So again, my corner is good. Put a clip there.
I'm going to go same thing over. Down the middle. I want to angle. So I've got that angled up. Do a nail press. Fold down. To the bottom so I don't get this corner. That doesn't have to be where I want to be. That's my first one. Get that corner. Put you in like so. Straight. There we go. Again, we're going to end up with a mitered corner. Down to the bottom. In the middle. So no wiggly. I want wiggly. Wiggly, wiggly. Okay. Again, I want to do this as a 90 degree. Press down the nail. Move it back over. And we just want to bring it straight to the edge. So again, nice fine edge there. To this side. Middle. Corner it. Now I'm going to make it a 6 so that you can see this part, because I did not even think about showing you this part. And that would have been bad. You would have gone, how did you get those corners? This is not bad.
Okay, here is our piece, and as we flip this in, oh, I really needed to put a piece on this side. This piece is big enough. Yes. So this is going to be our back. Yay. Now we are going to flip this, the corners out, just like we would anything else. Just like we would if we were doing a bag or, let me go fix one thing. Cut a little bit off of here. That I will not save. Can't sew it to where you would see any of it. So let's go ahead and flip this out. So we are just turning it right side out. See how this folds over, and even the back is mitered. Well, pretty much the back is mitered because of the way we sewed it. There is our mug rug. I'm going to place this piece inside. Now for this, I'm going to tuck it under, if I can, so that I can fold that under just a little bit better. Okay, so I want to take this piece, flip him under, so you can see what I'm doing, flip him under, so that he is just like so. So you've got a nice straight edge on it. It's flipped under. Got my miter. I'm going to take this, flip it under. Okay, so what I did was I went and sewed around all the edges, around the middle and along the miter to make sure that stayed down. And then I flipped it over and sewed around all of our pieces. So now we have a mug rug that we can use like this side or this side, and either side would look fine, would look nice setting up. So I think though next time I won't do the border trim on it. It did not work out the way I had hoped. I had hoped we'd have border on both sides. I'm not real sure how to do that. We'll work on that because I was pretty sure I knew how to do that, and that's how I got the miters, but I meant to have them on both sides. So next time we will definitely get that. We will figure out. I think I should have done it in further, but that's not what I was looking for, so we will work on that piece. But there is that, and come back, hopefully you'll come back and see what we do with our leftover pieces that I am pretty excited about. So we will see how this next piece comes together and what happens with the next piece. Do we do another mug rug? Do we do it differently? Do we cut this into pieces and try to piece it together differently? So we're not just, I really like the way this is all angled in different directions. So maybe we do the same thing with this one. But we will come back next time and see, well, maybe next time, probably next time, and see how this turns out. So hopefully you'll come back. Hopefully you'll hit that subscribe, hit that bell notification, and hopefully you like my comment and will give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to leave me a comment. You know, even if it's something that you think I should have done differently, I will be happy to look at it. And a lot of times it's stuff I'm already thinking about, or sometimes it's stuff I had not considered. So please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think, and we will come back next time and do more crafting. And I hope you're with us. Thanks for spending time with me. Have a good one.